Yes, sir.
Thank you.
To ha-
Thank you. All right. Any others in support? Thank you. Seeing no others in support of if you're in support, come forward. You're not, then stay back.
My name is Carl Pinkston. I'm with the Black Parallel School Board, and we're in support. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any opposition to the bill? Seeing no opposition, any members of the committee wish to comment? Seeing no comments, the bill has been moved. I will second. Please close, Ms. Booker.
Want to thank, as I said, the staff for assisting us in this. Clearly, school climate is an extremely important element. This past week in our Black Minds Matter hearing in San Diego County, we heard from 3 students, and each one, even though they didn't talk about, they didn't use the term campus climate, they talked about what their campus meant to them, and how welcoming it was, and how friendly it was, and how they felt comfortable there, and how their teachers encouraged them. And so they were talking about the fact that it was a climate for learning, and very articulate in sharing with us why it was so important to have that kind of learning environment for them as they were growing. These were excellent students. So we respectfully ask for your aye vote. This bill requires low-performing schools to conduct school climate assessments for the purpose of providing needed information in the development of the school district's local control funding control, local control and accountability plans, the LCAPs. And so we respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. Please call the roll. The motion is due pass as amended to appropriations.
O'Donnell.
Aye.
O'Donnell, aye. Olson.
Aye.
Olson, aye. Kim. Kim, aye. McCarty. McCarty, aye. Santiago. Thurmond. Weber.
Aye.
Weber, aye.
Thank you.
The bill is out 5 votes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
With that, we'll move to AB 2548.
2548, AB
which is,
2548.
File item number 12.
Right. Mr. Chair and members, the Local Control Funding Formula, LCFF, enacted in 2013, completely overhauled the school funding and planning process. In adopting the LCFF, the legislature established 8 state priorities and required local educational agencies, the LEAs, district charter schools, and county offices of education to adopt a local control and accountability plan, an LCAP. Evaluation rubrics were also required by law to provide a holistic, multidimensional assessment of LEA and individual school site performance and reflect all of the state priorities. In December of 2015, the federal government adopted the Every Student Success Act, the ESSA, which replaces the No Child Left Behind, the NCLB, the alphabet soup of all of educators. The California State Board of Education and the California Department of Education are developing a California State Accountability Plan, which is slated to be submitted to the U.S. Department of Education as early as January 2017. The plan must be approved by the U.S. DOE in time to launch the new TK through 12 public education accountability system for the 2017-18 school year. Absent legislation, LCFS focus on targeting assistance to LEAs based on all state priorities, and ESSA's need to focus assistance on individual schools based on key indicators will result in a bifurcated system sending mixed messages similar to the dueling state and federal systems we had under No Child Left Behind. California students lag behind nationally on achievement measures and rank 49th in the state when it comes to achievement gaps. California's new multiple measure system of accountability needs to provide greater emphasis on growth, equity, and transparency in ways not currently being considered. This bill, AB 2548, will shine a light on our schools and will empower parents, community groups, and educators to take action, one, by establishing a coherent, aligned local, state, federal accountability system that addresses state, local, parent, community, and public needs, as well as federal requirements. 2, by ensuring ambitious statewide standards for performance and expectations for improvement that encourages continuous improvement and the closure of opportunity and achievement gaps. 3, by complying with federal law and establish a mechanism using multiple measures that meaningfully differentiates performance of all schools and identifies schools in need of technical assistance, support, and intervention. 4, by establishing the use of key indicators based on multiple measures in a manner that aligns and coordinates federal and state assistance to school and districts into a single system based on common measures. For elementary and middle school, multiple measures include the pupil achievement of English language arts, mathematics, and science, which is not currently included. 2, the academic growth. 3, the progress toward English efficiency for English learners. 3, chronic absence rates. And 4 and 5, the campus climate. For high school, it will include pupil achievement in English language arts, mathematics, and science, the graduation rates, the progress toward English proficiency for English learners, college and career readiness, and chronic absentee rates. And it will also include the campus climate. Lastly, AB 2598 includes intent language that specifies the system continue to support an advanced framework established by the local control funding formula and California's emphasis on continuous improvement, technical assistance, and support. Witnesses in support here today is sponsored by Children Now and Ed
Ms.
Trust
Weber,
West.
I'm going to ask you to hold off because we're going to
Okay.
bring up the CDE and AXA, and they're not going to take a position on the bill. But before we go to the witnesses, so that they can explain to the committee, it's a great. Listen, I'm glad you brought this up because this is a good way to educate the committee on what's been going on this effort already. A bill passed a couple years ago put this effort in play, and it's if they could just come up and explain, tell us what already has happened on this issue. Where are we? Give us a timeline, and educate the committee on the work that's already been done on this issue and is not done yet, but will be done shortly, as I understand it. So, if you would.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Debbie Look on behalf of State Superintendent of Public Instruction Tom Torlakson. As the chair indicated, the superintendent has not yet taken a position on AB 2548, but I am happy to talk about some of the work that's going on currently at the department and the State Board of Education, develop a single coherent system of accountability and continuous improvement that will fulfill both state and federal requirements. All of the work is going on with broad stakeholder input and involvement through an open public process. As Assemblymember Weber mentioned, the LCFF was adopted in 2013 with 3 distinct components: the LCAP, the evaluation rubrics, and the support and evaluation structure. The LCAP is the important component of the LCFF, and all LEAs are required to prepare an LCAP describing their annual goals for all pupils with specific activities to focus on state and local priorities. The LEAs must use a state board approved template to complete their LCAP. CDE has recognized that the current template is resulting in LCAPs that are overly complex and lengthy, and is working to produce an LCAP template that is more user-friendly for all stakeholders, including administrators and parents. We will present design principles to the State Board of Education in May and seek their input, as well as broad stakeholder engagement, to produce a final revised template for adoption in September 2016, which would then be in use by LEAs for the 17-18 school year. In terms of the evaluation rubrics, the State Board is continuing its work to develop LCFF evaluation rubrics for adoption in September 2016. These rubrics are central to the assistance and intervention components of the accountability and continuous improvement system. They help local education agencies identify their strengths, weaknesses, and areas in need of improvement as they develop their annual LCAP updates. They also set the standards for performance through specified key indicators, indicating whether LEAs or schools are eligible for technical assistance and intervention. The county offices of education, the department, and the newly established California Collaborative for Educational Excellence will provide technical assistance and intervention for schools in need of additional support. The rubrics will include, at a minimum, the 5 indicators required under the new federal law: the student achievement in English language arts and math, graduation rates, progress of English learners towards proficiency, 1 additional K-8 academic measure, and at least 1 other measure. In terms of the federal laws, as Assemblymember Weber mentioned, this was signed into law. ESSA was signed into law in December 2015 and goes into effect July 2017. It does provide more flexibility for states to design an accountability system that meets our own California needs, as well as satisfying the federal requirements. Encompasses measures beyond simply test scores, in line with California's commitment to a system incorporating multiple measures and focusing on accountability as well as continuous improvement. Requires the disaggregation by subgroups and allows the state to determine the 5% of schools requiring assistance. We do know that the federal regulations are currently in process and not expected to be adopted until at least late this year. Each state must adopt a state plan describing how we will implement the provisions of the new federal law. CDE is in process in preparing this plan. We'll provide updates at upcoming State Board of Education meetings as the plan progresses, and will provide multiple opportunities for public input. Our expectation at this time is that the State Board of Education would approve the state plan in January 2017, and then the U.S. Department of Education would have 120 days to approve that plan, which would allow, as Assemblymember mentioned, it to be implemented for the 16-17 year, which would be the transition year, the transition year in 16-17 with full implementation in 17-18. Interventions in those schools requiring assistance would begin with the 18-19 school year. And finally, I just wanted to highlight the work of the Superintendent's Task Force on Accountability and Continuous Improvement. This group that's been meeting since September 2015 has included a broad cross-section of stakeholders, up to 30 organizations. This has allowed the advocacy community to come together to develop a shared vision around accountability and continuous improvement. And the task force has completed a draft report, and the final report will be presented to the State Board of Education in May of this year. Some of the key points of agreement coming out of the task force: that indicators must encompass both equity and performance measures, be inclusive of the whole child measures as well as academic performance, and recognize the need to celebrate growth and narrowing of the achievement gap as well as strictly achieving a set academic measure. The superintendent will take these recommendations from the task force to continue work with the State Board of Education and the stakeholders as the accountability system is refined and finalized. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Respectfully, Mr. Chair, before the next speaker, may the author finish presenting her bill? Not with all our witnesses, but
Going to our witnesses, but right now we're hearing from two entities that have information that I think is relevant, and the committee should be educated on this topic. So that
I couldn't
so
agree
right
more,
now
but
we
is
will
there a
hear from
reason we're
AXA.
not doing normal
We'll hear from
protocol?
AXA now. Thank you. I'm sorry. Proceed, please.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members. Edgar Sassueta on behalf of the Association of California School Administrators. We don't have a formal position on the bill, but we do appreciate the invitation to come up and talk about the work going on. We know the committee usually doesn't like having people up here without positions, but we're happy to share what we can on the work going on. We were asked to just talk a little bit about what's going on with the superintendent's task force on continuous improvement and accountability. Our executive director, Wes Smith, and the president, and Eric Kynes, president of CTA, are the co-chairs of the committee. And as you heard from the department, they've been working since September to come up with some recommendations both to the state board and to the legislature. I think then that's one of the reasons that I think we held off on taking a formal position on this bill. I will say that one of the key objectives of that report is same as the author's intent here, and it is to create an aligned system both at the local, state, and federal level. That is one of the key principles that will come out of the report. You already heard some of the general themes in terms of demonstrating a commitment to equity, an importance on educating the whole child, and building a collaborative system across all the sectors. So I think the report will give all of our policymakers, both here in the legislature and at the state board, a good amount of content to make some decisions moving forward. The only other piece I guess I would add, you already heard from the department on some of the work taking place. I think from AXA's perspective, we would highlight some of the work that's also taking place from the practitioners. The state board recently convened the California Practitioners Advisory Group, which is 17 members, administrators, teachers, folks in the field doing this work. And they just had their first meeting last week, and is again the same intent as the bill, same intent as the report you will see from the task force, and is to try to create a coherent system to take a look at what the appropriate indicators are. So I would say everybody is generally on the same page on what that objectives are. You just won't get some of those pieces of information until a little bit later in the process. The accountability report from the SPI, the SBIA task force, that'll be coming out again in May. It will be presented at the next State Board of Education meeting.
But then again, I just quick comment, from what I'm hearing here is that there is a process in place. It was actually set up by this body, what, a couple years ago. I wasn't here. Maybe some of the folks here were here, and it handed it off to the CDE, the State Board of Education, to develop the accountability plan that has been going on, and that is to be delivered about September. We've got to wait for ESSA, that's the federal act and the associated regulations. So it'd be kind of, jumping the gun to act today, from my perspective.
Yeah,
But
one
thank
other
you.
thing I forgot to mention, I think it is important. We talk so much about stakeholder feedback and how important it is to solicit the viewpoints of all of our various constituents and communities. We would applaud, I would say, the state board and the department for that matter, that they have had a very open process, from creating this practitioners group to consistently bringing up this issue at the State Board of Education meetings. There's been a lot of opportunities to solicit that input. And it's something that AXA has taken very seriously, to make sure we have our practitioners, our folks doing the work on the ground, giving them an opportunity to share those voices. So I think that's worth noting throughout this process.
Thank you. And it'll be interesting to hear from those folks today is what's maybe, if they have something to say, some of the folks are going to comment. If the process is broken, we'd like to hear that too, but I just don't think it's done. With that, thank you too for your information. Again, that was to educate the committee on what has taken place thus far in the process. And with that, if your witnesses would please come forward. 2 witnesses, 2 minutes. Thank you.
Please.
Mr. Chair and members, Brian Rivas on behalf of the Education Trust West. We are co-sponsors of this measure. We brought it to Dr. Weber and approached our co-sponsors at Children Now because we'd like to see an aligned accountability system, and we'd like to see a system that promotes closure of opportunity and achievement gaps. Alignment, I'll just say very quickly, is important to have an efficient and an effective system, but we also want a system that gives consistent information to policymakers and to parents. And lastly, I think we want this system to be built on the most robust measures of college and career readiness. And this bill reflects our combined best thinking on what those ought to be. Legislation is necessary to align the systems because the LCFF framework set out what the criteria would be for supports and assistance for LEAs, but it doesn't speak to schools. So we need a bill if we want a system that addresses the criteria for supports to schools and LEAs and make sure that it's in full alignment. Secondly, I want to say that we do have some concerns about the nature of the conversation going on at the state board. I think one of the most important things the accountability system can do is tell us how students are doing. Give us an indication of whether or not students are learning. And in the conversations at the state board, some of the conversations have been about using key indicators like whether or not schools are in compliance with the Williams Act. That's very important. We think it needs to be reported and measured and enforced. But those are measures of things like whether or not the lights work, whether or not kids have access to books, and whether or not toilets flush. Those aren't really what we're looking for by way of an accountability system. So this, again, reflects our best thinking and recommendations. And lastly, I'll say ESSA was a bit of a surprise. It afforded quite a bit of authority to states. We think this body has a role to play in making decisions about what the key indicators ought to be, because accountability systems tend to have long lifespans, and we think that should be developed in a public process through this body.
Thank you. Next witness.
Good afternoon, Chair O'Donnell, Vice Chair Olson, and members. My name is Samantha Tran, and I'm representing Children Now. The state has only a few policy levers to ensure at the end of the day that kids get access to a high-quality education and that gaps in achievement are closing. And enabling communities to know how students, schools, and districts are doing is one of the most powerful. This information, combined with providing support and intervening as necessary in our struggling schools and district, is an essential responsibility of the state. The accountability, as Brian mentioned, policy that's being put into place is likely to set the stage for a decade to come, and we think it's important for the legislature to engage now as it's being developed. When advocates for vulnerable children fought for LCFF and the equity investments that it represented, California had an outcome-based accountability system. 3 months later, the state allowed for the suspension of that system as we were bringing new assessments and standards online, with the understanding that key provisions from LCFF would help in that rebuilding process. As you noted, this work is happening right now, and we need the legislature to re-engage and invest your time and energy to bring the system together. There is good work happening at the state board, and we're very much engaged in that work and pleased at how they have brought stakeholders together, but the legislature can and should help. Only the legislature can ensure that we're able to truly build a multiple measure system, one that moves beyond just math and English language arts assessments and graduation rates, and also includes important measures like science, growth, chronic absence, school climate, many of the things we were talking about today. In addition, only the legislature can ensure that there is one system that aligns all of the elements of the local, state, and federal accountability approach. California has a real opportunity right now to bring the best of LCFF forward, and at the end of the day, ensure that parents and communities have the information that they need to make the best decisions for their children and effectively advocate for the most high-need schools. This bill provides for the clarity and transparency that parents and communities need and deserve, and I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. Any others in support? Please state your name, affiliation, and position on the bill.
My name is Carl Pinkston. I'm with the Sacramento Black Parallel School Board. It's a parent organization founded to close the achievement gap between African descendant students and white students. I'm here today representing, and I actually got my ear chewed off by parents around this particular issue, around transparency and the issue, concern about transparency in terms of
If you could just
performance.
be brief, sir, because we already had two witnesses.
And so for our community, we would really like to effectively engage at a local level and for our students to ultimately to be successful. We think that the state has to fulfill its role to provide that kind of tool and information that is outlined in the support of the AB 2548. And lastly, I think most importantly, the alignment of the state and federal accountability system will include a critical important measure of performance, and most importantly, that's the area of school climate and suspension.
Thank you. With that, all others in support, just state your name, affiliation, and position on the bill only, please.
Kim Lewis, Families and Schools in support.
Mr. Chair and members, Rand Martin on behalf of the California Charter Schools Association Advocates, and we're in support.
Good afternoon, Sarah Lillis with Ed Voice and strong support.
Laura Parr on behalf of the College Board and Students Matter in support.
Melvina Martin, advocate for Nicholas and Ethan Martin in support because they're truants.
Brian Lee on behalf of Fight Crime Investing Kids in support.
Great. With that, hearing no other support, could we have the any in opposition come forward?
Hi, good afternoon. Norma Sanchez with California Teachers Association. We are in opposition of AB 2548. It is a premature, and we have not yet completed the process for including all the stakeholders and gathering all the information for making decisions on implementing our accountability system. As we heard from other individuals, we are 2/3 of the way, and we want to be careful to include elements that give us less flexibility than what we have now. So 3 important components of that are the actual federal regulations we have not received yet, and we're going to get later this year. Number 2 is that Accountability and Continuous Improvement Task Force report, which is going to the State Board in May. Number 3 is our own State Board of Ed deciding on the rubrics, which will happen also in September of this year. So for all these reasons, we want to allow the current process that is stipulated in our own LCFF legislation to continue and to be completed prior to making decisions that may hinder our actual flexibility in developing and implementing our accountability system. So we urge a no vote on AB 2548. Thank you.
Spencer Holmes, high school science teacher, Liberty Union High School District. I oppose this bill.
My name is Ann Park. I'm a 5th grade teacher in Oakland Unified and a 2016 California Teacher of the Year, and I oppose this bill.
Scott Pennington, Liberty Unified School District, science teacher, and I oppose this bill.
Tammy Carr, teacher in Pittsburgh at a unified school district, 3rd grade, and I oppose this bill.
William Murphy, 2nd grade teacher, Livermore Unified, and I oppose this bill.
Marisa Smith, San Ramon Valley Unified, and I'm a reading teacher, and I oppose this bill.
Deborah Boehm, 5th grade teacher, Alvord Unified, and I oppose this premature bill.
Michelle Padron, 1st grade dual language, Juan Soria Elementary in Oxnard, brand new gold ribbon school, and I oppose this bill.
Fola Odebome, Professor of Economics, North Orange County Community College District. I oppose this bill.
Hillary Pedrati, Liberty High School English teacher. I oppose this bill. Thank you.
Shantae Fauntleroy, physical education teacher in the Hayward Unified School District. I urge you to vote no on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments from the committee?
Okay.
Ms. Kim.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Ms. Weber for bringing this bill forward, and thank you, Chairman, for bringing the 2 additional folks from CDE and AXA to provide us the information, the background information. I know the intent was good, but it was a surprise. I didn't know that they would be here, and I'm not sure if our sponsor or the author of the bill was informed that they will be here. Your intent was to provide us with the background information and to educate the members of this committee for the background before we discuss this, but I'm not sure. It didn't sound very neutral to me. So I just wanted to let the committee know that I just wanted to express that. But I just could not agree more that we need a greater emphasis on growth, equity, and transparency. We should empower our parents, community groups, and educators, and we can't do that without the information that this bill seeks to provide. And it is not in the best interest of our students and communities for us to shirk our statewide responsibility on closing the achievement gap by dragging our feet when a student or school is failing. So this bill, I believe, will intervene faster so our kids can, they won't fall further behind than they already are doing. So I don't think anybody will argue against the transparency and the meaningful multiple metrics that this bill outlines, which is why I'm very proud to support this bill, and I want to thank you again, Ms. Weber, for bringing this bill forward.
Ms. Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Weber, for bringing this conversation forward. It's a very important conversation that we've been having in the legislature for a number of years, all back to when I was a staffer 20 years ago, and we developed the first accountability system in California. The goal of the local control funding formula, as we all know, was to help close achievement gaps. And I believe your bill is consistent with that goal, and I believe the work at the State Board of Education taking place right now is consistent with that goal. We all want to see that take place. The only argument I heard from opposition about the concerns with this bill are that it's premature. And I do understand, I believe it's this week that the feds are finalizing the rulemaking process for ESSA. And so certainly we want to see alignment between the feds and the states, but that process is almost complete and will be complete, as I understand it, in plenty of time to amend this bill as it goes through the legislative process, if that even becomes necessary. But my understanding is we know enough about ESSA right now that we're at least very close. If we need any amendments at all, they would be minor in nature, I believe, and that's why the process continues through September. I do believe, and perhaps I'm going to comment a little bit more and ask a couple questions, but perhaps the supporting witnesses, Ed Trust West or others, could speak to the need for statutory guidance or a bill in order to also be assessing achievement gaps and whether they're closing at the school site level, as you mentioned, rather than just at the district level. Since LCFF really is geared toward district level outcomes, it's really important that we know how kids are doing at individual schools, because we all know, and it certainly applies to even the district that my children are within, that there are wide variances from one school to another within the same district. And so I would like to know a little bit more about why a bill is required in order to address that piece. But one of the concerns going on at the state board, although I agree with Children Now, there's a lot of really important, really good work taking place there as well. But one of the concerns that I've heard, and I'd love for witnesses to shed more light on this if there are more specifics, but is that there seems to be a greater focus on measuring participation rather than outcomes. And not that participation statistics aren't important, they are. But for example, I, as a parent, I don't want to know whether my sons or daughter have taken an assessment. I want to know how they performed on that assessment. And I certainly want to know that as a California lawmaker as well, to know whether we're adequately preparing our kids for the workforce that ultimately has an impact on our economy. To the committee, one of my concerns, I do understand that a previous legislature did defer to CDE and the state board to figure this all out. That doesn't necessarily mean that was a good decision. And I know there is growing interest among both Republicans and Democrats in the legislature in taking back some of the authority that we have relegated to the executive branch. And you can look at a number of different agencies, whether it's the Air Resources Board, whether it's the Department of Water Resources, whether it's the State Water Board, whether it's CDE, where we have set very broad guidelines and then turned it over to the executive branch to fill in the regulations, and we're in a very different place than the legislature ever expected. So I think it's appropriate to provide statutory, more specific statutory guidance to better inform a process that's taking place within the state board and within the executive branch. So perhaps to summarize my questions, if you could speak to the need for a bill to also get school specific, if you could speak to some of those concerns about measuring participation rates rather than outcomes, and then finally, if you could speak to what, if any, harm is there to providing more statutory guidance during this process, and do you believe that if this bill were to pass, it would delay the state board's work?
So Brian and I are going to divide and conquer. On your first question regarding schools versus districts, I mean, this is one of the areas where the bill tries to bring the system together, because ESSA is very focused on schools, and it looks at gaps in achievement as it kind of contemplates that accountability around schools. LCFF focuses on LEAs, so school districts, county offices, and charters. The board have been having good conversation around this key indicator concept, which works really well for ESSA's purposes. I mean, we can hone in and identify some multiple measures to identify schools for the purposes of ESSA. That doesn't play out based on the existing LCFF statute. The LCFF statute links back completely to the full 8 state priority areas. And we want to make sure we're valuing that broader set of 8 state priority areas, because it does provide a holistic, multidimensional view of how schools and districts are doing. At the same time, for the purposes of bringing in alignment, we can hone into these key indicators and then also have mechanisms to make sure that the broader 8 state priority areas are really lifted up through the LCAP process locally, through the evaluation rubric, and even how we're thinking about technical assistance and support. So I hope that answers the question of why we think we need statute to be able to bring that into alignment, and why ESSA and LCFF have different focal points.
And I'll speak to your second question, Ms. Olson. I want to make sure I'm accurate and say that no one has made a proposal along the lines that you're asking about. It's been in conversation, and there have been questions in the context about key indicators at the state board. A question has been raised, could, rather than science assessments, somebody did make a proposal to make science assessments a key indicator, and there was conversation about, rather than assessments, should test participation be a key indicator, or other things like perhaps measuring instructional minutes in the context of measuring whether kids have access to rigorous science instruction.
Okay, thank you. For the committee's consideration, and I know dialogue will continue, but I think we should consider whether this bill actually complements the good work that the state board's doing and enhances it further for better outcomes for all of our kids. Thank you.
I think just one of the challenges, and a point of information, you brought up ESSA being finalized this week. No, today I believe was the last public meeting. That's where they take public input. So then what they do is they get together and they develop the regulations. And those won't be out till fall. So in no way is ESSA going to be done this week. So we won't know how to comport these two, the bill to ESSA until we see the regulations come out in the fall. So therein lies the challenge with the timeline. Just for your awareness.
Can I also add that in terms of the way we approach the statutory construct in the bill is we only reference back to the existing statute in ESSA, and where the department has the authority to opine on, they can't deviate far from the statute, if at all, because of the ways that they've constrained the secretary. So we did try to be very careful and thoughtful on that front.
And again, just understand the regulations matter here too. You just can't go back to the statute. You have to look at the implementation language too, because that's what the state is going to have to respond to. With that, Mr. Thurman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually wanted to check in with the author to see if there were other things that the author wanted to tell us. I know you were framing, and I actually appreciated hearing from the department and other partners. And I'll be honest, I'm sitting here pouring through all of this stuff and listening to all this testimony, and wanted to know if there were other things that you wanted us to know about what you're doing with your intent with the bill, and anything else that you wanted us to know.
Thank you very much. One of the things that, and I think Ms. Olson and I were here when we fought for LCFF, and a part of fighting for LCFF was the issue of accountability, that we are assured that was going to happen. It's been over 3 years, and we have not seen that. We've also not seen, and some of us have tried to have ongoing engagement with the department in terms of making sure that the wishes of this body is being heard. If you pay attention to the things that we've been doing in the last year, a lot of the things come back, and we're still talking about LCFF, things that we thought would be in there that have not been put in, and we're still fighting to get it. I gave you a copy of this whole issue of the background of whether or not this is premature, and I hope most of you had a chance to read it, because it really went into talking about all the things that have happened over the years that we have asked for in terms of legislation, that we've asked for a variety of indicators. We've asked for these things. We've asked for things about outcome. And all of these things have been put forth, whether beginning really in 1999 with D.D. Alpert, Senator Alpert. And so all of those things have come forward, and none of them have actually been utilized and been put into place. By the time something happens as an afterthought, then we've changed, and the same has happened here. When we talk about the misalignment between API and No Child Left Behind, for years we've been on back and forth with two systems that really don't align themselves together, that have not given parents and the public a single format for them to understand what is happening in their schools, the good things that are happening, the challenging things that are happening. And now we're faced once again with two separate systems that we're working on in isolation from each other that don't necessarily require us to align them. We talk about alignment, but we're not sure whether it's going to actually align themselves. This gives us the authority, we are the legislature, to basically weigh in on this matter and to put forth the ideas that we've already been talking about that need to be included. We just had a conversation about science today. Science is not being included in the variables. We put science in because this body has consistently talked about STEM education and the importance of STEM in our schools. So we put science in. We've talked about campus climate or school climate. We put that in. We've been talking about attendance and truancy and graduation rates, and all of those things are there. It does not prevent or does not prevent the state from continuing to do its work. But we provide the guidance. We are the ones who should provide the guidance for the framework as to how we think this assessment system should look, what it should probably be saying to our public, and how our people should be using it. We are optimistic, as I said before. This bill has, we talk about prematurity, and what will probably happen if we don't weigh in today, that probably by next year we'll be presented with something, and then we'll have a concern for it. And it will take us another 4 years to unravel our concerns and to try to change it, because we'll be told that we're too late. It has already been done, and now we have to wait to see how it is implemented before we have any input. By then, we will probably have moved from ESSA to SSSR, who knows? And we will have another system of assessment, and we as a legislature will not have had a chance to have input. By passing this bill today, the bill positions us as the legislature with the vehicle to weigh in by the end of the summer on more clarity as it moves through the system, as we've allowed a lot of things that are not real clear on this committee to continue to be worked on. But the framework of what we want is clear in terms of a one system that really provides outcome information, as well as taking a total picture that parents and community can look at and assessing it, and that we don't have two separate systems working against each other, or two separate systems that people then have to choose. What is my school really like? Is it what they say over here in LCAP, or is it what they say over here in ESSA? So this gives us an opportunity finally to align it. If adjustments are necessary in this bill, we're more than willing to make them. We know that will probably happen in all of our bills as we move forward. But this is our opportunity to really provide guidance. It's interesting to me that if you look at the list, there are almost 70 or 75 organizations who've signed on to this bill, who find the necessity of having this particular bill in this vehicle for the purposes of providing some level of assessment of our schools. We only have one organization opposed to it, but we've had 75 other organizations that are with it, and some of those organizations are part of the Superintendent's Advisory Committee. And that's important to understand. I think one of you guys, she serves on the advisory committee. So we have some of the advisory committee actually signed on to this bill, which must say that whatever's happening across the street is not really addressing all the critical issues that need to be addressed, and they look for us as the legislature to weigh in and provide the guidance. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Thurman was not finished, I believe. Go ahead and proceed.
Thank you. I thought it was, I did think it was somewhat persuasive that we do have these processes in place, and I'm looking forward to hearing them. But I actually agree with the author, and if a legislator wants to suggest that we ought to come up with a process and do that now, I think that's a legislator's prerogative. We legislate, and I think that's what we do. I do think that what the superintendent has laid out, I think we should look at it, but I think an author and a legislator has the right to bring that forward, and you said that in a way that I think is very persuasive. I appreciate the author's, Dr. Weber, thank you for explaining kind of why you did this bill. I appreciate that you are ultimately saying we've got to help the students who have the highest need. Mm-hmm. And I think, in this committee, we've had opportunities to talk about that. And a long time, several weeks ago, we talked about LCFF and LCAP, and we talked about really talking about what accountability is there. And I think we've moved away from that conversation in this committee. I hope that we will continue back on that theme. I still have some questions about some of the statements that were made today, and when I understand the intent, and I think it was the witness from Ed Trust West who said that this framework will tell us what we need to know about how our schools are doing. And I was really perplexed by that, because I feel like, don't we already know how our schools are doing? And we know that many of our schools are not doing well. We already know that. And I thought, what is this really telling us? I'm not taking issue with any of the metrics that are recommended, but I'm saying, don't we already know? I remember serving on a school board, and I know that the author did too, and we talked about the lowest performing schools, and it was usually the 5% that were lowest performing schools. And don't we already know what schools are struggling and that we need to help them? I would ask that question to the author or to the witness who referenced it. Don't we already know that we have schools that need help and need support and need additional intervention so that all of our children can learn and be successful?
You know, Mr. Thurman, you're absolutely correct. Ron Edmonds once said, we know all we need to know. What we lack is the will.
Come on.
And oftentimes, people need data to give them the will. And so I think that's important in terms of the reports that's there. But ESSA asked us to distinguish schools, and No Child Left Behind did too. So that's a federal thing that's going to have to be there. The question is, what are you distinguishing when you do that? There's test scores to look at, that's one thing. There's campus climate, there's attention, and the purpose of looking at that, of course, is to figure these things out. But also important to that, as you probably did when you were on the school board, I had a high school that was the lowest achieving high school in the city. I won't call its name, but everybody knows if they live in San Diego what school it was. And the students were struggling at that school. But you know what? When we had disaggregated the data, we discovered that there was a mini school like that in every school in our district. That our highest achieving school actually had the same low test scores for that population of students. And by having this broad picture of a school with 70 percentile as achievement, that once we disaggregated the data, those parents who were African-American children had the same low test scores. And in fact, the low achieving high school that we had actually outperformed those kids. But the data didn't show it overall until we disaggregated it. Now, what did it do? It changed people's perception about where kids go to school, but it also made those schools and those other neighborhoods to begin to focus on that population. Because despite they had kids in the 90s, but the kids of color were all in the 30s. But it looked good to be in the 70s. And so even though we think we really know, sometimes we really don't. And it becomes important to have the data for that purpose.
Thank you. I want to ask if the representative from the Department of Education is still here. I know that this bill calls for support for districts that are identified that need additional support. And I ask that because, I've never been a fan of all these frameworks that we've been provided at the federal level, at the state level, the race to the top and all this other stuff that we were provided that forced us to say, we're going to give money to school. You got to be called a low-performing school in order to get the help that we always knew that you needed. It bothered me, but I'll work within whatever framework we have to work within to help students. And I agree that data is helpful. Sadly, the parents in my district, they know the schools that don't perform well, and it's common knowledge. What I really want to get to, I really want to be about what are we going to do about it. Knowledge is power, but when we take willful action, then we're really doing something. I want to ask, as this bill would direct the department to provide technical assistance to schools that are identified as being lower performers, or high needs, I think is the language used. What does that mean? What will that technical support mean to districts that need help?
I think all of that is still being worked out, but we're looking at a multi-pronged effort. The support is being provided by 3 different entities working together: the department, the county offices, and the new collaborative that was formed as part of LCFF. And they're looking at a tiered system of support. So there's a basic level of support that all schools, regardless of how well they appear to be performing, can improve. So there's general supports and building on best practices for that broader tier. Additional schools that under the ESSA, for example, identify certain schools or subgroups that are not achieving where they need to be according to things like the evaluation rubrics, will be given additional support. Again, intervention from the collaborative coming in, providing technical assistance, providing examples of best practices, pairing with other districts with similar demographics that have achieved better results with those particular subgroups, for example. And then finally, there's a more intensive level, a 3rd tier of most intensive intervention when we're seeing persistent underperformance by schools. So again, those things are working out. The collaborative has just begun its work. They've just started this year. They're starting to do some pilot work right now, they've identified a number of districts who voluntarily are working with them to find ways to make sure that those best practices can be delivered in a way that's most effective to meet the needs of those districts.
Thank you. I understand we have to wait and see and we will wait forward for that. You know, I'll just say that I want to be about what the solution is. I applaud the author for putting a spotlight on where the greatest needs are. I think we must do that, but I want to spend my time on where we're putting a solution. And, you know, like many, I've got frustrations about the local control funding formula and the accountability in LCAP, but what I appreciate is that when we talk about accountability, we're also pairing some resources to actually do something and to make a change. And I want to be about that conversation, and I appreciate the author's desire to put a spotlight on those who are in greatest need. But without additional resources, I don't feel that I can put my energy there. And with all due respect, I can't support this today. But I applaud the author's desire to put that spotlight. I'm putting it on record that my commitment is to work on resources to actually address the schools that we already know are challenging. Thank you for taking my questions today.
Great, thank you. And I think, you know, this is another good time to educate this committee about the CCE, the California Collaborative for Educational Excellence, because that's an entity, it has an office, it has an executive director, a very capable executive director, formerly served as the superintendent of Long Beach, Carl Cohn. So can you walk us through what that agency does? Because my guess, and I wasn't here, I believe you two were here, actually when this whole process that we're trying to, you know, shift away from was put in place.
Shift away from, get back to what its intent was.
Either way. But honestly, the LCFF was put in place, okay? The evaluation effort was put in place. There was a timeline developed for that, and that's the timeline that we're saying, hey, some are saying, hey, stick to. Some are saying, hey, you know, jump off it. But also the California Collaborative was put together. Talk about the mission of that organization, how you can call them and ask for help, but also they can come in like a hammer at some point.
Yes, as I said earlier, that the collaborative was one of the pieces enacted with the LCFF in 2013. They began meeting last year in February with 5 board members that were selected, and the executive director, Dr. Carl Cohen, was hired in September of 2015. They have started to work with a small number of districts, and yes, there's a number of ways that the superintendent can designate ask the collaborative to go in and work with the school district that has been identified in need of assistance, as I discussed earlier. The school districts can also request the assistance of the collaborative. In terms of the actual mechanisms of how they will do their work, I believe that's still really under development and discussion. There hasn't been a comprehensive plan put together as far as I'm aware, but there definitely is clear direction in terms of their role in providing support to the districts that need it, and in a broad way.
Great, thank you. And what I will do is I will commit to holding an interim hearing on that topic. I just want you guys to show up.
It should be noted.
All too often, I don't have a good number of members come to the interim hearings.
Just don't make it the week before Christmas.
Yeah. It should be noted that
2 weeks.
that this bill would not have any negative impact at all on the operation of this organization.
Right. My only effort in highlighting that was to say that there's a plan in place. There's been an agency developed to go into districts and listen. That lowest 5% of schools, maybe higher than, should be higher than the 5%. They should swoop in and take action. I've got no problem with that. Just where I'm coming from today is we talked about misalignment, and I'm afraid this bill will create misalignment.
This bill will not create misalignment.
I think we disagree
It will
because we don't
create a
know
format for you and a
what the
framework.
ESSA, requirements are going to be, and we won't know.
Okay.
So for us to go forward and create something that might, further misalignment and create another system that was misaligned. Remember we had AYP, API. I remember sitting in the first day of school when they go over the scores and you'd be like, AYP, okay, API, I need to jump. It gets very confusing. So I don't want to get back into that where we've got two confusing models of school measurement. I think we should have one. I think it should be effective. And again, where I come from is there is a process in place. Let's see what the process delivers us. With that, is there any other comments from the committee? I'll second. And again, what I'm doing is I'm just going to hold off, Ms. Weber, because I can't commit to this bill today
Fine.
because I don't think we're ready for this bill.
Good, okay.
The motion is to pass to appropriations. O'Donnell?
Aye. Not voting. You almost got me, Ms. Weber.
Can't change your vote.
Not voting.
O'Donnell, not voting. Olson? Aye. Olson, aye. Kim? Aye. Kim, aye. McCarty? Santiago? Santiago, aye. Thurmond? Thurmond, not voting. Weber?
Aye.
Weber, aye.
The bill is out, has 4 votes. Mr. Hernandez, he's still there? Yes, he is. Proceed when ready. We're going to go to file item number 7. File item number 7, AB 2308.
Mr. Chair and members, I would like to begin by accepting the committee amendments, all co-authors, and thanking staff for their wonderful work. Assembly Bill 2308 establishes the California Healthcare Coverage Enrollment Assistance Act of 2016. This act provides uninsured students of the California community colleges and the California State University system with the information about healthcare coverage options and enrollment assistance. It also extends the sunset on AB 2706 of 2014, which is currently providing the same information in K-12 schools. Under the Affordable Care Act, young adults have new health insurance options. This includes the ability to join a parent's plan until the age of 26 and tax credits to help pay for health insurance. AB 2308 is a proactive and practical solution which will help uninsured students around our state enroll in health care coverage. AB 2308 enjoyed bipartisan support in Higher Education Committee and has no opposition. It is supported by a broad coalition of health advocates, including the California Immigrant Policy Center, California Primary Care Association, Health Access, Children's Defense Fund, and the National Association of Social Workers. With me here today to testify in support is Ms. Rocio Gonzalez.
Second.
Thank you. Is Ms. Rocio Gonzalez, alumni of Cal Poly, San Luis Obispo, to speak on behalf.
Your witnesses in support, please.
Hi, my name is Rocio and I attend Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. At my university, I struggled to identify healthcare resources my family and I needed. One year, there was a pilot program offering counselors who were able to explain to my family how to enroll for health coverage. Unfortunately, that program was only available at my university for 1 year, and the following year, we had to seek out help through a series of multiple calls to various social services who forced my family to practically jump through hoops just to receive adequate health care and help. This caused an unnecessary amount of stress when, as a student, I should have been focusing on my studies. I'm here to support AB 2308 because I believe students should have access to the health information they need. Thank you.
Mr. Chair and members, Seth Brownbill here on behalf of the California Teachers Association. CTA believes quality health care is a basic human right and supports health care proposals which incorporate universal access to quality comprehensive coverage. We believe that healthy kids learn better. We urge your aye vote.
Thank you. Any other witnesses in support?
Deborah Boehm, Alfred Unified Educators Association, CTA member, and I wholeheartedly support this bill.
Fola Odebumi, North Orange County Community College District, and I support.
Shantae Fauntleroy, Hayward Unified, also CTA, I support.
Any witnesses in opposition? Seeing no opposition, any members of the committee wish to comment? Do we have a motion? Mr. Thurmond moves, Mr. Santiago seconds. You may close. Oh, Weber? Okay. I saw him point to you.
I respectfully request an aye vote.
The motion is due pass as amended to appropriations. Secretary, please call the roll.
O'Donnell.
Aye.
O'Donnell, aye. Olson.
Not voting.
Olson not voting. Kim. Kim, aye. McCarty. McCarty, aye. Santiago. Santiago, aye. Thurmond. Thurmond, aye. Weber. Weber, aye.
Six to zero, the bill is out.
Thank you very much.
other bills we didn't have motions on? Okay. Mr. McCarty, file item number 16. Been moved and seconded. You may present.
Thank you. I'll try to shorten it then. I'm pleased to present this measure, the Quality Early Education Development Act of 2016, requiring our Department of Ed, in consultation with our State Board of Ed and our existing State Advisory Council on Early Learning, to prepare and submit a multi-year plan to provide access for all low-income 4-year-olds to have 1 year of pre-kindergarten education. As we know, vast research shows that investing in early education is highly effective in promoting student academic success, preventing kids from entering the juvenile justice system, and fighting poverty. Even with recent investments in the past 2 budgets, we still have 30,000 low-income kids who don't have access to either Head Start, transitional kindergarten, or our state preschool program. We know that these experiences really matter in helping a young child succeed in life, and with this, we know that there are really 10 elements that focus on critical building blocks of quality preschool standards, child assessments, well-prepared teachers, support for these teachers, support for English language learners, family engagement, sufficient learning time, class size with low teacher ratios, interactions, and a well-implemented state quality rating system for improvements. This bill will focus on all these measures and have the state come back with a plan to really focus on pre-K for all. The time is now. With me today are my local superintendent for the Yolo County Office of Schools, Jesse Ortiz, and Deborah Kong from Early Edge, California. I ask for your aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Your witnesses.
I'll keep my comments very brief since there's already been a motion. It looks like it's looking good here. First of all, I want to compliment the Assembly of Education here for the passionate discussion on the educational issues that have come forward for you today, in particular the last one on AB 2548. You know, very briefly here, on a personal perspective, I really see preschool as an educational justice issue. And I don't think anybody in this room could not agree with me when you look at the achievement issues, in particular with low-income children and African American and Latino children. And listening to Assemblyman Thurman's passionate understanding of what was going on with the changes that could be made, you asked, what are we supposed to be doing about the performance? It's very simple. Preschool is the answer for long-term children to benefit both from an individual and society. I just, there's no other qualitative method that shows that it works. Even LCFF, there's no definition or defining reasons to show long-term that that's going to work. Preschool does. For the last 50 years, over 100 studies. So I really ask for your support. And you know, it's really time that public education and children issues start looked at as an investment and not as a cost. And I know that's where you're going. Thank you.
Hi, Deborah Kong, Early Edge, California. Early Edge is very proud to sponsor Assembly Bill 2660 because it creates a roadmap for California's future, providing a plan to ensure young children have access to start school ready to learn and succeed. It recognizes the real promise of early learning to fight poverty, to narrow the achievement gap, to give kids an equal opportunity to succeed in kindergarten and beyond is really only possible if programs are of high quality. So it focuses on building blocks of quality that are informed by research on early learning programs that have shown positive outcomes for kids, as demonstrated in a recent brief by the Learning Policy Institute. At its core, we know quality is about great teaching. I've seen firsthand with my son who's in preschool that young children thrive when they have secure, positive relationships with their teachers who can support their learning and development and provide responsiveness to their individual progress. AB 2660 addresses this by calling for a plan that includes well-prepared teachers with training that addresses early childhood education, including child development and instruction of young children. And to support our teachers in getting there, it says the plan should include strategies for multiple pathways to degrees, certificates, and credentials, including support for early childhood educators to attain additional education and qualifications, and strategies to support a workforce that reflects the diversity of California. AB 2660 will help California chart a future where all of our children are in high-quality programs that give them an opportunity to be ready for school and on track to reach their full potential.
Thank you. Any others in support?
Donna Artukovich, California State PTA, in strong support of this bill.
Martha Zaragoza Diaz, California Association for Bilingual Education and Californians Together, in total support for this bill.
Erica Hoffman on behalf of the California School Boards Association in support.
Brendan Tuig on behalf of Cadango in strong support.
Enrique Roacho with the Los Angeles Unified School District, and we have a late letter in support.
Kevin Tromer with the Compton Unified School District in strong support.
Susie Costa with the Advancement Project in strong support.
Brian Lee on behalf of the law enforcement leaders, business leaders, and military leaders with Fight Crime, Invest in Kids, Ready Nation, and Mission Readiness in support.
Trudy Schaefer representing the League of Women Voters of California in strong support.
Jeff Baca representing the Riverside County Superintendent of Schools in support.
Barrett Snyder, we have the Santa Clara County Office of Education, San Francisco Unified School District, and the Small School Districts Association, all in support. Thanks.
Thank you. Any opposition? Seeing no opposition, any members of the committee wish to comment? Seeing, Mr. Thurman.
I want to ask a question.
Mr. Thurman's got a
Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead. No, I didn't know you, I thought they were getting ready to vote. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Dr. Webb.
Oh, you're up, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Someone go.
Okay, I thought we were getting ready to vote. That's why I wanted to, because I thought they were calling for, just to, this is a 1 year of preschool. Is that what this is about? 1 year of pre-K or preschool or TK or whatever it is. It's just the year before. So this is like the 4-year-old or something like that. Is that right? This is what this is?
Yeah, the goal is to focus on the kids that don't already have 1 year of TK, Head Start, or a state preschool program, to provide a multi-year plan. Because we heard when this was vetoed last year, and we heard from people around the state, there are facilities issues and all kind of issues to deal with how you would expand to serve those 30,000. So it would focus on doing that for at least 1 year for 4-year-olds.
So you thought, and as we're talking 30,000 kids, is that all there is that's missing this 1 year? Is that what
It's
we're talking
hard to
about?
count, but research by the American Institute for Research stated that there's about low 30,000 of kids who do not have a seat in one of those three.
Okay. Well, and this, how is this related to last year? Was last year similar to this, the child care bill of 2015?
Yeah,
think
we
it
had a
was
bill
preschool.
that passed by this committee and
Mhm.
passed with bipartisan support,
Mhm.
and it was vetoed by the governor. And essentially, the governor says that there already is authority to do so in the existing statute by the state budget of 2014. But we came back after really talking to people across the state and realized that there are some planning issues, and there are, really limitations on space and elements of quality and what it really means to have high-quality early education. So we thought it'd be better to have a thoughtful approach. And this is somewhat the same track what the governor's proposing in his proposal. His early ed proposal is talking about revamping this system, and this potentially is the same look, but it's a more thoughtful look down the road of seeing what elements would be needed. Did you want to add anything?
Only to say that it really does include elements of quality, which we know that research shows result in better outcomes for kids.
And so this is basically a planning bill that looking at what it would take to do a 1 year of preschool for these 30,000 or more kids. That's what this is? It's a planning, not necessarily a
Yeah, it
going to
wouldn't
do
fund it,
bill.
and we're going to continue, hopefully in our budget,